welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about two things that I have had requested since the beginning of time, which is astral travel and remote viewing. So these two things I honestly didn't know a lot about, so it took me a while to do the research before I could even come to this video. But every time that I put up a poll on Instagram, on my website, or a newsletter, this was always requested by you all. So I'm excited to finally get to it and kind of give you my thoughts on what they are and how they work. So if you're new here, welcome. My name is Lauren. I'm a psychic coach, and on my channel, I love to talk about all things metaphysics, psychic abilities. And so if you're learning how to strengthen those abilities and you need some resources, definitely subscribe. I have a ton of videos on my channel and video courses to help you out. Now, in the metaphysical community, it can be a little difficult because a lot of this stuff is not proven scientifically, right? So a lot of people have their own theories on how things work, how they don't work. And so astral travel, remote viewing, all of these things that we're talking about in any of my videos, it can be confusing because there can be several different names for the same thing. And it might just be that one person names it this, another person over here names it this. There might be different approaches. And that's kind of what I figured out for this video. When it comes to astral travel and remote viewing, it's just things with a different name that we're already familiar with. All right, now astral travel is first. And astral travel was interesting because it reminded me a lot of shamanic journeying. But what it is, it's the belief that our spirit can leave our body, that we can move it through space, time, reality to go visit another place. And you do this basically through like a meditation, or, they wouldn't necessarily call it a meditation, but through getting your body at a higher frequency, and then you can therefore move to visit another place on the planet at this current time. And so it's very much rooted in the belief that your spirit can separate from your body, which also happens a lot with dreaming. A lot of people believe that when you dream, you're physically leaving your body. I forgot to put in earrings today. Too late now. So people use astral travel for all sorts of things. They might use it for fun, to travel and experience things. They might use it for spiritual growth. And again, I would describe it from what I've seen as more of a meditative experience where you're sitting down, laying down for a while, going into a meditative trance-like state, listening to some music. You're in that space for a while before you decide to travel. And one of the words that I kept seeing pop up a lot around astral travel was intentional out-of-body experiences. And so this to me says a lot, because when we are thinking about out-of-body experiences, right, usually those occur around death or maybe a traumatic event. You hear a lot about out-of-body experiences, and I think they're really blown up into something that's kind of huge and exciting because people have these amazing things happen to them. And so when we say we're doing intentional out-of-body experiences with astral travel, it's okay, we're trying to recreate that intentionally, which to me is automatically I worry that people don't give it enough credit if it's not a big mind-blowing experience, right? So I think that I feel a lot of people might get stuck in feeling it has to be this amazing out-of-body experience that's intentionally created, but it might not be. And I feel I just want to say that's okay. Overall, it seemed like astral traveling was very esoteric, way more on the scale of woo-woo. It was almost always yoga people that I was finding it around. Not that there's any judgment there, but it has importance when we talk about remote viewing. So it's very much a spiritual, you have to believe in the fact that your body can leave your soul for this to work. One of my biggest complaints though that I saw with astral traveling was that there was a lot of just kind of vagueness, structurelessness. It was very hey, just get in a high vibrational state and do that for 20 minutes. And if you don't know what that means or looks like, that might be really confusing. And so I feel it was kind of oh, just be this and then you can astral travel. Again, no, I'm not harping on astral travel at all. It just seemed a little bit more on the woo-woo side, a little less structureless. But if that's what you resonate with, you might totally understand, get that, and you're able to jump into astral travel. However, what I want to say about this is astral travel is so similar to shamanic journeying. And I have a really old video on shamanic journeying. Let me know if you'd like an updated one. I shamanic journey all the time. I do that more than I honestly meditate. And shamanic journeying is the same thing, but it's founded on the belief of core shamanism, which was basically they took all of the shamanic practices over many, many ages and kind of condensed it down into like, okay, what seems to be the core beliefs of shamans over time? And they kind of just pinpointed a few things like, oh, okay, almost all of these shamans tended to believe this, this, this. And so shamanic journeying, I would call it a very meditative, visual form, maybe not always visual, but it's a journey that you go on. And in shamanic journeying, you can go to the upper world, the lower world, or the middle world is how they describe it. Just for the sake of keeping this brief, the middle world is kind of like our reality right here, right now, this plane of Earth. And so you can travel, you can shamanic journey on the middle world in this current time and space and go, do exactly the same things that you might do with astral traveling. Obviously there's some nuance here. I do think that the way that you get into astral travel versus the way that you might get into a shamanic journey, very different. You're working with different guides, you're listening to different types of music, but at their core, they're very, very similar. It's kind of like, okay, we're going to set an intention, we're going to meditate, we're going to go to this place, and then we're going to come back. And both of them are like that. So I just wanted to throw it out there. If you have tried astral travel and it doesn't work for you, maybe try shamanic journeying, because I feel like there's a little bit more structure there than what I've seen with astral travel. Truly though, I feel like same thing, different name. Now, remote viewing, honestly, this was such an interesting experience for me to research. I've obviously heard of these things, but I wanted to really make sure I understood them before I came and talked about them. And remote viewing, honestly, is the yang to the yin of astral travel. It's a lot more masculine. And let me just kind of describe what it's like. So it's the ability to sense details in another place that's hidden, distant, or remote in time is kind of how they describe it. So you're just sensing something that's happening somewhere else. I think the difference here between astral traveling and remote viewing is that you don't think that your body is leaving to go experience that thing. It's that you are still here, you're still whole, and you're just tuned into it over there, if that makes sense. And I watched a couple videos on this, but I will link the one video that I really watched a lot of that I think is just perfect. And I'll put it down in the description. And what I gathered from remote viewing was that there's kind of this energy of either you have the ability to do it or you don't. You already know where I'm going with this. And it's kind of just something that you sit down, you try to sense it out, you write down a bunch of notes, and then you see if you're right, kind of thing. Obviously, you might have heard a lot about remote viewing in regards to the government. There's a lot of programs that have tried this out. I think from what I've seen, a lot of the research was kind of debunked. It didn't work. But they have tried this, and I think, they've tried it enough that it became kind of popular in the media. For example, Stranger Things. We totally see that in one of those scenes where they're testing out the kids and they're trying to get them to sense something in a different room. That's exactly what remote viewing is. But what I found about remote viewing was that whenever I searched it, it was such a masculine thing. A lot more men supported it. A lot of dude vloggers were likely to talk about it versus women. And again, it was in the government. It was very much all the videos I saw, all the research was very much trying to prove that it exists, which I think is very interesting because, when we come, take a step back and think about spirituality and the psychic ability, I feel like there is a masculine sense that kind of wants to prove that everything works, everything's right. That's that side of us. Not that this is a men thing. It's just it's everyone has masculine and feminine energy, right? I'm trying to say this without being sexist, but I think what it is sexist, unfortunately. It's that, remote viewing has a lot more of a palatable taste for male viewers, people who identify as male. And then astral travel, some of these more woo-woo things maybe I would describe, is kind of a little bit more female-centric. And I thought that was a very interesting thing because they're essentially, I'm going to get to this point that they're all very similar, but it just shows how different people need different words, different perceptions in order to be able to swallow something, if that makes sense. So I thought it was extremely interesting and just like a cool experiment to see how different men described how this worked than it was for women to describe how it worked. But one of the videos that I watched on remote viewing that I thought was just amazing, I am going to link it down in the description below, because if you watch it, the guy who is describing what remote viewing is, he is describing the psychic ability. And I love it because exactly everything that he is saying is the psychic ability. In that video, he's basically sitting at a desk. He's trying to tune into the energy of a certain place. And for the most part, he got it all right. And the way that they asked him questions about how he sensed things, how it worked, I was like, that's the psychic ability. That's the psychic ability. That's what this is. And it was interesting just because, you know, when you give it the name remote viewing and when you have a man describe it, the way it's received is a lot different. That's all I'll say about that. But like in the video, he even says that his accuracy is not always 100% right, which that's what we say about the psychic ability. It's not always right. The one thing I would argue with was that he kind of gave this like, can everyone do this? They asked him that and he kind of was like, oh no, you have a proclivity for it or you don't. And I think he's on the right track. I truly think he understands how it works, but you know, he probably has never heard it in terms of the psychic ability. I'm sure a lot of people haven't. So I think it's interesting because, you know, he's already hinting to the fact that some people have it more exercised than others. However, I am not of the belief that, you know, some people cannot access their psychic ability at all. I think everyone could do this with practice, obviously. So what is the core between these two things, astral travel and remote viewing? And maybe I would even argue shamanic journeying. It's that you are able to see something. You are able to see another place in time in the reality of what we live in right now. And what do we know about clairvoyance? Clairvoyance is the psychic sense of seeing. We can tune into the energy of something even if it's not right in front of us, and we can pick up information on that situation, person, anything. Now, are we physically moving our spirit to be able to sense that place or that energy? Maybe. I think you could probably argue that part of you probably is. I'm sure some people would say you absolutely are. I don't think it matters how it happens. I think it's more that it happens. But using clairvoyance, you can set the intention that you want to see a different place. So in a lot of ways, it's very similar to astral travel. It's just the method and how you get there is a little bit different, or the belief in how it happens is a bit different. Now, when it comes to remote viewing, I would say it's almost exactly the same as clairvoyance, honestly. From what I read and researched and saw, it was psychic ability with a different name. The only thing I would say here is that remote viewing, they might not, it might allow for more senses. So more of the sight, sound, touch, hearing, because a lot of the things you do describe might be of those 5 senses. There's really no difference there. It's just which clair are you using in remote viewing when you're trying to tune into this place. It might be clairvoyance, yes, but it could be all sorts of other clairs. So hopefully you're following me with this. Please let me know if you are. But with astral travel, remote viewing, clairvoyance, there's kind of just this same core intention of I want to see that place, or I want to get information about this situation, this place, this time. And when it comes down to it, it's all about using your psychic ability. Again, the approaches might be a little bit different. The belief in how it happens might be a little bit different. But essentially, I would say it's all kind of using your psychic ability, using your clairs to travel, to pick up information, to sense something. Now, one note that I wanted to make about all of this that I observed was that there's this keyword here, like viewing, sight. It's astral traveling so that you can see something. It's remote viewing, you want to look at something. It's like eyesight, even clairvoyance about your eyesight, right? And I think one of the things that I often see people come to me for is that, you know, they try out these methods, they're not working, they're not seeing anything. And that is like one of the biggest complaints that I hear all the time, even with clairvoyance. I can't see things. I want to see things. Why can't I see things? Maybe I'm not psychic. And we have to remember that seeing something is just that clair. It's clairvoyance. And sometimes that clair might not be very strong. So you might not be seeing something because it's just not a strong clair for you. Not that you're like not good enough or that you're doing something wrong. Sometimes with the clairs, you know, you might have a natural proclivity to have one of those more strengthened. However, what astral travel did not talk about, what remote viewing did not talk about, was that you can change that. You are not susceptible to wherever your ability is at in the moment. You can increase your clairvoyance. You can increase your psychic ability. And I think that's my, you know, my main thing of why I would always champion like the clairs and the psychic ability first, is because you understand, oh, that's just one of my psychic senses and I can increase that. I can make it better. I can target it and do exercises specifically for it. So, you know, as you do those exercises, your clairvoyance gets better. And then when you go back to astral travel, when you go back to shamanic journeying, when you go back to remote viewing, it gets stronger. And I think that a lot of these places were just kind of like, oh, well, you know, do it. And if you don't do it, maybe you're just not good at it. Now, I'm not saying that every creator out there is saying that, but there just wasn't a lot of information of like, if you get stuck, if you're not seeing things, what do you do? So I only say that to just have you hopefully remember as you're going out and doing more research on these, that you might have to come back to your clairvoyance and really focus on how do I increase that eyesight? And then the opposite goes too of like, just because you don't see things doesn't mean you're not astral traveling, remote viewing, psychically sensing something. You could be hearing things, you could be feeling things, and that is totally valid too. I think we get really hung up on eyesight and psychically seeing things. One, because the media makes it that way. We think that we need to be seeing ghosts in our actual like physical space like we would on TV. No, that doesn't happen. I made a whole video on it. And also we use our eyesight all the time. That's like how we pick up information around us. I would say that's like one of our more heavily used senses, just like day to day. So when we can't see something, it's really hard for us to believe that it's real. So overall, just know if you're not seeing things, that's okay. That's normal. The other senses are also valid, but also you can increase that clairvoyance. You can make it better if you really want it to be. And again, as you take, you know, that clairvoyant skill into any of these modalities, these techniques, it's just going to help. You're going to be able to astral travel better, remote view better, shamanic journey better, whatever it is that you're into. Now again, all of these techniques are valid. It's just what you personally resonate with. I personally resonate with shamanic journeying, clairvoyance obviously, but that's my bias. That's what I was like raised. That's what I was taught. But there's really no wrong technique here. It's what works for you. It's what resonates for you. It's the approach too. Like maybe you really like how astral travel gets you into that space. Maybe you really like the more practical side of remote viewing. Maybe you like the music of shamanic journeying. Like there is no wrong answer and there's no right word. And I think that on my channel, I like to just explain how it all connects maybe, but I never want to be like, oh, this is the right word and this is the right way to do it. However, in this community, it can be really tough to just like be like, what is this and what's that and how are they different? I'm so confused. So hopefully this has given you a little bit to think about, and now you can kind of understand what the similarities are, what the differences are, and then you can go off and explore and do more of any of the above. And if one doesn't work for you, maybe you can hop to something else and still try to get maybe the same effect. So I hope that kind of understands how they overlap, how they don't. Let me know if this video was helpful. I think it was helpful for me to learn, honestly. So now that whenever anyone asks me a question, I can answer it. But just know if you have any other questions in the future, my Patreon is a great place to do that. I have a monthly Q&A. You can ask me any question that you want. I put up a video every month answering everyone's questions. But if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!